The wind screamed across the frozen plain. The night sky was black, filled with sharp stars that shone like cruel eyes watching from above. Snow fell in thick sheets, carried by the storm, burying everything beneath a heavy white blanket. In the heart of this storm, silence ruled, broken only by the sound of the wind. Beneath the snow, 3 alien sisters lay trapped. Their skin was pale, their lips turning blue. They had been cast away by their own people. The elders had judged them as cursed because they were born infertile. To their kind, a woman without the gift of bearing life was seen as useless. The sentence was cruel. They were taken to the edge of the village, forced into the snow, and buried alive. No one wept for them. No one spoke their names. They were meant to vanish without a trace. The sisters held one another as the cold pierced deeper into their bones. The youngest tried to whisper, her voice weak and broken. "Is this the end for us?" Her words trembled, her teeth chattering. The eldest closed her eyes. She wanted to comfort her, but her throat felt frozen. Only silence came. The middle sister pressed her hand against the youngest, trying to give warmth, but she too was fading. Breath after breath, they sank into the snow, their bodies stiff, their spirits breaking. Darkness pressed against their minds. It felt like the world itself had turned against them. Far from the village, a lone figure walked through the storm. A human. His face was hidden beneath a hood. His body was wrapped in a thick coat, heavy with frost. Each step was slow, sinking into the snow, yet he did not stop. His eyes scanned the ground, sharp and restless. The cold tried to crush him, but his heart burned with strength. He was searching, though he did not know what he was searching for. Something inside pushed him forward, as if fate itself was guiding his steps. Then it came. A sound. Faint. Fragile. Almost lost in the storm. A cry. At first, he thought it was the wind playing tricks. He stopped, holding his breath. There it was again, soft but clear. A voice calling from beneath the snow. His heart jumped. Without thinking, he dropped to his knees and pushed his hands into the freezing white. He dug, the ice cutting into his skin. Snow filled his gloves. His fingers went numb. Yet he did not stop. His breathing grew heavy, clouds of steam rising into the dark air. At last, his hand touched something soft. Cold skin. He cleared more snow, his hands shaking. A face appeared. It was the face of a girl, alien yet striking, her features delicate, her eyes half shut with frost. She was still alive, but barely. His pulse raced. He dug faster, pulling her up with careful strength. Then his hand brushed against another body. And another. 3 of them. 3 sisters, trapped beneath the snow. The human dragged them out one by one, laying them on the ground. Their lips quivered, breath shallow. Their eyes opened just enough to see him. Fear flickered in them at the sight of a stranger, but it was too weak to last. They were too close to death to care. He looked at them and felt a fire ignite in his chest. Anger at the cruelty of those who had done this. Sorrow for their suffering. And a fierce determination that they would not die here. "You are not alone," he said softly, his voice steady against the storm. "I have you now." He lifted the eldest sister first, carrying her across his shoulder, then returned for the others. Each step was heavy, the snow fighting to pull him down. But he moved with strength born not from his body, but from his heart. He would not let the storm take them. He would not let the world bury them. The sisters felt the warmth of his body as he held them close. Even through their pain, they sensed something different in him. No one had ever fought for them. No one had ever reached into death to pull them back. Their people had cast them away as worthless. Yet this human, a stranger, refused to let them go. The wind howled louder, but to the human it was only noise. His focus was on the 3 fragile lives he carried. His breath came in harsh gasps, but he pressed forward. In his mind, failure did not exist. He reached the edge of his shelter, a small cabin built against the rocks, lit by a faint fire inside. He pushed open the door with his shoulder and stepped into the warmth. The snow clung to his coat, melting in heavy drops. He laid the sisters down near the fire, covering them with blankets, his hands moving quickly but gently. Their eyes opened slowly. Their lips moved, whispering broken words. Why did you save us?" one asked, her voice weak as ash. He knelt beside them, brushing the frost from their hair. His gaze was calm, but behind it burned an emotion they could not name. "Because you are alive," he said. "And as long as I breathe, you will not be left to die." The sisters stared at him in silence. For the first time in their lives, someone had given them value. Someone had chosen them. A spark lit inside their hearts, fragile but real. The snow still raged outside, but in that small room, a new warmth was born. A bond had begun, one that would change their fate forever. The fire inside the shelter burned low, but its glow pushed back the shadows. The human knelt close to the flames, his hands trembling as he rubbed warmth into the three alien sisters. Their skin was still icy. Their breaths were faint, each one weaker than the last. He wrapped them in thick blankets, his voice steady though his heart was heavy. "You will not die tonight. Not while I am here." The eldest sister's eyelids fluttered. She tried to speak, but her voice broke into silence. The human pressed a warm cup of broth to her lips. She sipped weakly, her body shivering as the heat touched her throat. The second sister stirred next, coughing before she could swallow. He steadied her gently, whispering words of comfort. The youngest opened her eyes last. Her gaze was wide, frightened, yet filled with a faint spark of trust as she looked at the man who had pulled her from the snow. The storm outside pounded against the walls, but inside the cabin, there was a fragile circle of light. He moved between them, feeding the fire, pressing blankets tighter around their bodies, and forcing life back into their fading frames. His breath was heavy, his skin burned with cold, but he did not stop. Hours passed. The sisters lay in silence, too weak to move, but slowly, warmth returned to their cheeks. Their lips lost a pale blue color. The eldest's voice finally broke the stillness. "Why did you save us?" Her words were small, filled with disbelief. The human looked at her, his eyes sharp yet gentle. "Because no one deserves to die like that," he answered. "Not buried alive. Not forgotten. You are worth saving." Her eyes filled with tears. She turned away, ashamed. "We are not worth anything. Our people called us cursed. We cannot bear children. We were thrown away." The human's jaw tightened. His voice carried both sorrow and fire. "Your worth is not measured by that. Your life is your own. And it is precious." The sisters looked at him as if he spoke a language they had never heard before. Their people had branded them as useless. From the moment they were born, they had lived under the shadow of shame. Yet this stranger, a man not of their world, spoke to them as if they were treasures. His words planted something new in their hearts. A fragile seed of hope. The youngest sister shifted closer to the fire, whispering, "You do not even know us. Why would you care?" The human knelt, placing another log into the flames. His eyes met hers, steady and calm. "I do not need to know your names to know your worth. I saw you dying, and I could not walk away. If that makes me a fool, then I accept it." The middle sister's lips trembled. She had never heard anyone speak such words. She pressed her hands against her chest, trying to hold in the sudden ache of emotion. Tears slipped down her cheeks. She reached out weakly, and the human held her hand without hesitation. His warmth spread through her, stronger than the fire itself. The silence grew heavy, but it was no longer empty. It carried something new, something alive. The sisters exchanged glances, their fears slowly melting into wonder. As the night stretched on, the storm outside began to fade. The human sat awake, watching over them. His body begged for rest, but he refused. His eyes stayed on the fragile sisters, ready to act at the first sign of danger. He listened to their breathing, steady but fragile, like the first spark of a flame that could die at any moment. The eldest sister stirred again. Her voice was soft, but this time it carried strength. "Our people will not forgive this. They will come for us. They will come for you. The human did not look away from the fire. Let them come. They buried you once. I will not allow them to do it again. His words struck her like a thunderclap. She had lived her whole life without anyone to stand for her. Now here was a human, a stranger, ready to fight an entire village for their lives. Her chest tightened with a feeling she could not name. The middle sister whispered, her eyes never leaving him. You are different from them. Different from us. Why does your heart burn so strongly? He finally looked at them, his gaze steady. Because I know what it means to be cast aside. I know what it means to be told your life has no value. And I swore I would never let another soul suffer that way if I could stop it. The youngest sister covered her mouth, choking back a sob. She had no words. Only tears that fell like rain. The fire crackled. The storm outside grew weaker. Inside the small shelter, 3 sisters who had been thrown into the snow now clung to life. And at the center of it all sat the human, his eyes burning with a promise that their people had never given them. They had been buried alive. Now, with every beat of his heart, he gave them back their breath. The storm had passed, leaving the world quiet and white. The snowdrift stretched endlessly, glittering under the pale morning sun. Inside the small cabin, warmth lingered. The sisters slept near the fire, their faces peaceful for the first time since they were pulled from the snow. The human sat nearby, his eyes heavy, yet his body refused to rest. His thoughts were sharp, circling the danger that lay ahead. He knew the village would not remain silent. By midday, whispers had already spread. A hunter from the village had seen smoke rising from the cabin. He had returned with news. The human had taken the cursed sisters into his shelter. By evening, the elders gathered in the great hall, their faces lined with anger. To them, the sisters were not daughters of their people. They were a shameful reminder, an insult to their traditions. And now a foreign man, an outsider, had defied their judgment. This cannot be allowed, the eldest elder said, his voice hard as stone. They were buried by our decree. To save them is to spit on our law. Another elder leaned forward. The human does not belong to us. Yet he dares to challenge our order. He must give them back to the snow. If he refuses, he will face our wrath. The decision was swift. Messengers were sent to warn him. The curse must not be carried into the village. The shame must remain buried. At dusk, the sisters stirred awake. Their bodies were still weak, but the warmth had returned to their cheeks. The eldest rose first, leaning on the wall as she tried to stand. Her eyes were sharp, though fear hid behind them. She looked at the human. They will come, she whispered. Our people will not forgive this. The human poured water into a cup and pressed it into her hands. Then let them come. I will not surrender you. The middle sister shook her head, her voice trembling. You do not understand. They see us as a curse. To them, you are not saving lives. You are protecting disease. The youngest clutched his sleeve, her eyes wide. Please! They will hurt you. They will kill you for what you've done. The human's gaze hardened, though his voice remained calm. If they wish to fight, let them fight me. But you will not go back to the snow. His words carried a fire that stunned the sisters into silence. For the first time, someone had spoken as if their lives mattered more than the laws of their people. They felt both fear and awe, drawn to his strength even as dread coiled in their stomachs. The knock came at nightfall. Heavy fists pounded against the wooden door. The human stood and opened it, his body filling the frame. Outside, 3 villagers stood with torches. Their eyes glowed with cold authority. The elders command you, one said sharply. Return the cursed ones. They do not belong in the land of the living. The human did not move aside. His voice was steady, but each word cut like iron. They belong where I say they belong. And they belong here. Alive. The messenger's face twisted in anger. You dare defy our law? You are not of us. You have no right to protect them. The human stepped forward, the firelight from inside casting his shadow across the snow. Law does not give you the right to murder. You buried them like animals. But they are not animals. They are sisters. They are life. And if you want to take them again, you will have to kill me first. The villagers flinched at the sharpness of his tone. They had expected weakness, fear, or compromise. Instead, they found defiance stronger than the storm. One muttered a curse under his breath, then spat into the snow. You will regret this, the leader growled. The elders will not forget. The human did not answer. He closed the door in their faces, locking it behind him. His heart pounded, but his eyes burned with unshaken resolve. The sisters stared at him, their bodies trembling. The eldest found her voice quiet but filled with awe. You stood against them. No one has ever stood for us. He turned, meeting her gaze with calm strength. Then it is time someone did. The middle sister pressed a hand to her lips, tears streaming down her face. She whispered, You will suffer for us. Why? Why do this? The human's voice was low, almost a whisper, but filled with iron. Because your lives matter. And if I must carry the weight of your people's hatred to keep you alive, then I will carry it. The youngest crawled closer, clutching his arm as if afraid he might vanish. We do not deserve this, she whispered. We were told every day we were worthless. He placed a hand gently over hers. They lied. The fire cracked behind them, filling the silence. The sisters exchanged looks, their hearts torn between fear of their people and the growing light this human had sparked in them. Outside, the village burned with anger. Inside, something far stronger began to grow. It was not just survival now. It was defiance. It was love, not yet spoken but already alive, waiting to be claimed. And for the first time, the three sisters dreamed of a future beyond the snow. The nights grew colder, but inside the cabin the fire never died. The human rose often to feed it, making sure the sisters never felt the breath of death on their skin again. The cabin was small, yet it became a place of safety, a place where silence no longer carried despair but carried peace. The eldest sister watched him with careful eyes. She had lived long enough to know that kindness was rare, especially toward those marked as cursed. Yet every time he moved, every time he spoke, he carried no hint of disgust or pity. His hands were strong, but gentle. His voice was calm, but filled with fire. She wondered what kind of heart could fight the world for strangers. The middle sister was quieter. She kept her gaze lowered, hiding the tears that often filled her eyes. When she ate the food he gave, when she felt the warmth of the blanket he wrapped around her, her chest ached with a strange, heavy sweetness. Her people had never looked at her with worth. Now she feared to look too closely at him, because something inside told her that if she did, she would never want to look away. The youngest sister was the boldest. She followed him with her eyes curious, her lips often parting as if she wanted to ask questions but held them back. One night, as he mended a broken strap on his coat, she finally whispered, Why do you smile when you see us breathe? He paused, the needle frozen in his hand. He turned to her, his lips curving with quiet warmth. Because every breath means I did not fail. Every breath means you are alive. Her heart jumped. She covered her face with her hands, trembling. The middle sister reached to comfort her, but her own hands shook. The eldest only stared at the human, her chest heavy with emotions she had no name for. As days passed, laughter began to grow in the cabin. It started small, hesitant, like the first spark of fire in wet wood. The youngest teased the middle about her quiet nature. The middle teased the eldest about how long she stared into the fire, lost in thought. Soon, even the humans smiled at their playful words. The cabin, once heavy with silence, now echoed with fragile joy. One evening, the human shared stories of his own world. He spoke of wide rivers, tall forests, and skies filled with birds. His voice carried a softness that drew them in. The sisters listened with wide eyes. To them, his world sounded like a dream. A place without snowdrifts that swallowed the weak. A place where life was not judged by one's ability to give birth, but by the strength of one's heart. You speak as if your world is full of light, the eldest said softly. The human nodded. It is not perfect. But even in the darkest places, there are people who protect one another. That is what makes it worth living. The middle sister felt tears on her cheeks. She did not wipe them away. She wanted him to see her cry, because her tears were not of shame this time. They were of hope. The youngest curled closer to the fire and whispered, "If only we could see such a place." The human's gaze softened. "Perhaps one day you will. Perhaps one day you will walk beside me there." The cabin fell silent. The words hung heavy in the air, filling the sisters' hearts with warmth and longing. None of them dared to answer, but all three carried the promise in their souls. That night, as the wind howled outside, the sisters slept close to him. The eldest lay with her back against the wall, her hand resting near his. She did not touch him, but the closeness made her heart pound. The middle lay on his other side, tears drying on her cheeks as she dreamed of rivers and forests. The youngest slept near his chest, her breath steady, her small hand clutching the edge of his coat. The human did not sleep. He stayed awake, his eyes fixed on the fire, his heart heavy with both duty and desire. He had saved their lives, but saving them was no longer enough. He wanted them to live without fear. He wanted them to see a future beyond cruelty. He wanted to carry them into the light they deserved. The fire cracked, casting sparks into the air. He whispered a vow, so soft the sisters could not hear. "As long as I live, you will never be abandoned again." The flames burned brighter, as if sealing his words. And in that small cabin, in the heart of a world that had cursed them, a bond was forged. Not of law, not of blood, but of warmth, laughter, and a love that was slowly taking root. A love that no snowdrift, no storm, no village could bury. The days of quiet could not last. The warmth of the cabin had given the sisters new life, but outside, the village burned with anger. The elders saw the human's defiance as an insult. They whispered that if he was allowed to protect the cursed ones, others might question their authority. That could not be allowed. So they gathered soldiers, strong men with spears and torches, and sent them into the night. Their command was simple. Take the sisters back to the snow. If the human resisted, make him pay with his blood. The wind was sharp that evening, rattling the wooden walls of the cabin. Inside, the fire glowed, and the sisters huddled close together. The youngest leaned against the human's shoulder, whispering softly about the world he had described. The middle sister listened in silence, her eyes shining with quiet longing. The eldest sat near the door, uneasy. She could feel the weight of danger pressing closer. Her fear became truth when a heavy knock shook the cabin door. The human stood, his body tense, and motioned for the sisters to stay behind him. He opened the door slowly. Torches flared outside. Shadows of armed men stretched across the snow. Their leader stepped forward, his face hard, his voice sharp. "The elders demand the cursed ones. Hand them over." The human's eyes burned with steady fire. "No." The soldier lifted his torch higher. "Do not test us, outsider. These women are not meant to live. Their fate was sealed the day they were born." The human stepped out into the cold, closing the door behind him. His voice cut through the night. "Their fate is not yours to decide. They are alive, and they are mine to protect." The soldiers laughed bitterly. One spat into the snow. "You choose death, then." They rushed at him. The first spear struck forward, but the human caught it, twisting it free from the soldier's hands. He swung it like a staff, knocking another man back. The snow exploded under their boots as steel clashed against raw strength. The sisters pressed against the cabin walls and sighed, hearing the cries and the thud of bodies falling into the snow. The middle sister covered her ears, tears streaming down her face. "They will kill him," she sobbed. The eldest shook her head, though her own body trembled. "No. He is stronger than them." The youngest pressed her face to a crack in the wood, her heart pounding as she watched. The human fought like fire itself, his breath harsh, his body moving with a fierce will that no weapon could break. Blood marked his arm where a blade had cut him, yet he did not falter. He drove the soldiers back step by step, his roar echoing into the night. You will not take them! One soldier fell, another staggered, fear creeping into their hearts. They had thought him only a man. But now they saw him as something more, a storm wrapped in flesh. The leader snarled, charging forward with a torch raised high. Then burn with them! He hurled the flame toward the cabin. The sisters screamed. The human moved faster than the wind. He caught the torch before it touched the wood and crushed it into the snow, smothering the fire. Then he turned, his eyes wild with fury. With one strike, he sent the leader sprawling into the snow, broken and breathless. The soldiers froze. None dared move. They saw the truth in his eyes. This was no outsider to be crushed. This was a man who would fight to his last breath for 3 women the world had cast away. Shame began to creep into their hearts. They lowered their weapons one by one, dragging their leader away. The human stood in the snow, chest heaving, his body marked with blood, but his spirit unshaken. When the last soldier vanished into the night, he turned back to the cabin. He pushed the door open slowly. The sisters rushed to him at once. The eldest held his arm, her eyes wide with fear and awe. You are bleeding. The middle pressed her hands to his wounds, tears falling. Why do you fight so hard for us? Why suffer for us? The youngest threw her arms around him, her voice breaking. We thought you would die. But you did not leave us. He sank to his knees inside the cabin, his strength finally giving way. His voice was low, but his words carried the weight of truth. Because your lives matter more than mine. And as long as I breathe, no one will take you back to the snow. The firelight flickered across their faces. The sisters held him close, their tears soaking his skin. In that moment, they no longer saw themselves as cursed. They saw themselves as chosen. Outside, the night was cold. But inside, a new fire burned. A fire no spear, no torch, no elder could ever put out. The fire glowed steady inside the cabin, but the human's body trembled with exhaustion. His arms were marked with cuts. His clothes were torn where blades had struck. Yet his eyes held the same fire as when he had stood against the soldiers. The sisters surrounded him, their hands gentle, their tears falling freely as they tried to stop the bleeding. The eldest pressed cloth to his wound, her lips tight with fear. You should not have fought for us. They will not stop. They will return in greater numbers. The human lifted his head weakly. His voice was low, yet it carried strength. Let them come. I will not give you back. The middle sister's tears streamed faster. She shook her head. Why do you suffer for us? We are nothing to them. They call us cursed. They will never see us as worthy of life. He caught her hand with surprising firmness, his blood staining her skin. His gaze burned into hers. Then let them see through me. If your people cannot recognize your worth, I will show them. You are not nothing. You are life. And I will not let you believe otherwise. Her lips quivered. Her heart ached with a pain that was both grief and hope. No one had ever spoken for her like this. She felt as if the chains of her shame had cracked, and through the crack, light poured in. The youngest clung to him, her voice trembling. You will die for us if this continues. We cannot let that happen. If you fall, we will be lost again. The human's arms wrapped around her. He pulled her close despite his weakness. If I fall, it will not be because you are worthless. It will be because your lives are worth every breath, every drop of blood. Remember that, no matter what happens. His words struck deep. The sisters looked at each other, their hearts filled with both love and fear. For the first time, they understood that silence would only bring more pain. If they remained quiet, the human would continue to bleed for them until there was nothing left. The eldest rose to her feet. Her legs shook, but her voice was strong. No. We cannot let him carry this alone. We must speak. The middle hesitated, trembling. If we speak, they will punish us. The eldest looked at her, tears shining in her eyes. If we remain silent, he will die. And we will return to the snow. I will not let that happen. The youngest wiped her tears. She took both their hands. Then let us stand together. For him. For ourselves. The decision was made. At dawn, the sisters walked into the village, the human behind them, wounded but unbroken. The villagers gathered in shock. They had expected to see 3 women dragged back into the snow, but instead they saw them walking proudly, their eyes blazing with a light no storm could cover. The elders stood tall, their faces twisted with anger. You dare return here? The oldest spat. You were cast out. You are curses upon our people. How dare you show your faces again? The crowd murmured, waiting for the sisters to bow their heads as they always had. But this time, the eldest raised her voice. We are not curses, she declared. Her voice trembled, yet carried across the square. We are alive. We are daughters of this land. And we will not be buried again. The middle stepped forward, her tears falling openly, her voice breaking yet strong. You told us we were worthless because we cannot give life. But he gave us life. He pulled us from the snow when you left us to die. Who then is cursed? The ones who kill their daughters, or the one who saves them? The villagers gasped. Shame rippled through the crowd. Mothers lowered their heads. Fathers shifted uneasily. The truth was heavy, undeniable. The youngest gripped the human's arm, her voice fierce. You call us cursed. But look at him. He is not of our world, yet he has shown us more love, more worth, than all of you. If you believe we are curses, then remember this. He chose us. And we choose him. The square fell into silence. The human's eyes burned with pride as he stood behind them, blood on his skin, but strength in his heart. The sisters had spoken. They had broken the silence of their shame. The elders trembled with fury, but the crowd no longer looked at them with loyalty. They looked at the sisters with awe. They looked at the human with respect. The old power of the elders began to crack, just as the snow cracks beneath the first breath of spring. For the first time, the sisters felt the weight lift from their shoulders. They were no longer voiceless. They were no longer cursed. They had chosen to rise. And in rising, they had chosen love. The sky above the village turned pale with morning light. Snow glistened like a sea of diamonds, but the hearts of the people were heavy. The elders stood stiff, their power trembling as the sisters' voices echoed in every mind. The crowd no longer looked at them with fear, but with doubt. Their grip was broken, not by swords but by truth. The human stood behind the sisters, his body bleeding, yet his eyes steady. He had carried them through storm and fire, but now he watched them carry themselves with voices sharper than any blade. He felt pride swell in his chest. They no longer hid. They no longer bowed. They were no longer buried. The eldest turned to the villagers, her voice clear. We were cast into the snow to die. But we did not die. We were saved. We were chosen. And now, we stand alive before you. The middle lifted her chin, her tears shining like stars. If life itself has value, then we have value. If breath itself has meaning, then our lives mean something. And no elder can take that from us again. The youngest gripped the human's arm, her eyes blazing. He gave us back our lives. He fought when no one else would. He bled for us. And so we choose him. If that makes us cursed in your eyes, then let us be cursed forever. Because in his eyes we are not curses. We are treasures. The villagers murmured. Some turned their heads in shame. Others lowered their weapons. Mothers clutched their children close, guilt biting at their hearts. For the first time, the sisters were not seen as shadows. They were seen as flames. The eldest elder stepped forward, his voice shaking with rage. You dare defy our law? You dare claim worth when the gods themselves marked you barren? The human moved past the sisters, standing tall despite his wounds. His voice was steady, iron wrapped in fire. If your gods demand death for the innocent, then your gods are false. If your law demands cruelty, then your law is broken. You call them barren, but I see them as full of life. You call them cursed, but I call them mine. His words struck the square like thunder. The crowd gasped. Some bowed their heads. Others dropped to their knees, unable to face the weight of what they had done. The eldest sister stepped to his side, her hand brushing his arm. You stood for us when we could not stand. Now we stand with you. The middle sister placed her hand over his heart, feeling its steady beat. Her voice trembled. You gave us life when we had nothing left. You gave us worth when all we felt was shame. The youngest took his hand in both of hers, her eyes filled with tears and fire. We are yours. Now and forever. The human looked at them, his chest heavy with emotion. His eyes softened, his voice breaking with tenderness. Then I promise you this. You will never be abandoned again. As long as I breathe, you will be loved. As long as I stand, you will be safe. As long as there is life in me, you will never be cast aside. The sisters leaned close, their foreheads pressing against his chest. They could feel his heartbeat, strong and steady. The sound filled them with warmth greater than any fire. The villagers watched in silence. Some wept. Some turned away, unable to bear their shame. But none could deny what they saw. 3 women once buried as curses had risen, and beside them stood a man not of their world, yet stronger than any law, stronger than any storm. The snowdrift that had once been their grave was now only a memory. In its place stood love, defiance, and a promise that could not be broken. The sky cleared as the sun rose higher, casting light across the village. The sisters held the human close, their hearts beating as one. For the first time, they no longer feared the cold. They no longer feared silence. They no longer feared death. For they had been chosen. They had been saved. And in his arms, they had found life eternal. The snow might fall again. Storms might rise. Villages might curse. But nothing could bury them anymore. They had made their choice. And their choice was him.